Sweet Pet 1v1 plus Monster Fighting Upgrade+Team Pet. Once through the book, fortunately, they still managed to penetrate the genius canon fodder female supporting character in the Cultivation novel, but were mercilessly crushed by the female protagonist and ultimately fell. Luo Juan bit on a small handkerchief and followed the female protagonist around, stumbling and stumbling. Everyone says that the female lead's team is full of unparalleled experts, but unfortunately, Luo Juan, a mouse poop, has emerged, and the female lead and others are protecting her, unable to bully her. Until one day, the delicate little girl put an end to the crazy spirit beast that no one dared to provoke with one hand, and everyone's jaws fell to the ground in surprise. Luo Juan smiled and patted the non-existent dust on his dress, saying, "I'm sorry, I hit harder, didn't I die?" Male lead's perspective. In a graceful white dress, with feather fans and silk scarves, while chatting and laughing, the ghosts disappear. Once their souls leave, they fall into the little girl's divine seed to cultivate and thrive. From then on, they constantly manage the troublemaking little girl, but accidentally lose their hearts. Sweetly trying to make a salty fish, but forced to become a fairy maiden, vs. noble, gentle, and elegant gentleman's combat power explodes as a ghost king, novel keyword. Surprise! The Xianyu female supporting character is actually a cultivation master without a pop-up window, amazing. Xianyu's female supporting role turns out to be a master of cultivation. Download the complete set of TXT, amazing. Xianyu female supporting figure unexpectedly becomes a master of cultivation. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. He was already beaten to death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. I was already beaten to death, oh my goodness. Madam is going to have a baby. Hurry up and invite the doctor. Where's the midwife? Scissors and scissors. A beautiful woman slept on a soft couch with a pale face, sweat dripping continuously on her forehead, her black hair clinging to her cheeks, biting her lips tightly, and blood dripping down her fair chin into her clothes. The servants around were walking hurriedly, with a worried and anxious expression on their faces. Madam. Almost done. Please come on, exert yourself. The woman's eyes were tightly closed, and tears kept slipping into her temples. Her mouth murmured with a vague voice, "Go home. I want to go home." The servant next to her kept shedding tears, and the poor lady, since being taken into the mansion, has never experienced such pain. Wow, whoa, 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 whoa. The crying of a baby instantly shattered the anxious atmosphere, and everyone burst into tears of joy. Born. Born. Madam. There's also one more. The head mother of the Luo family gave birth to 2 daughters of Shilingling. The head of the Luo family was naturally very happy. She rewarded all servants with a piece of gold and went to the city gate to give congee to beggars for 7 days. Almost the capital knew about this. When it comes to the head of the Luo family, that is truly an extremely mysterious existence. It is said that the head of the Luo family dotes on that woman extremely, hiding and loving her in the mansion day by day, and others cannot even look at her. At least she is also the head of the 3 major families in the capital, but she has been rumored to be infatuated. Little Luojuan couldn't speak yet, her mouth opened and her saliva flowed. She was on the same bed as her sister by blood, surrounded by iron railings. My biological father never came to visit them from beginning to end, but instead took away the beautiful mother and found a wet nurse for each of them. Just. Very suddenly. Her sister's name is Luojuan, who is 3 minutes older than her. She looks a bit silly and only cries all day to breastfeed. The small and tender Luojuan scratched his head comically, feeling that the name was particularly familiar, but he couldn't remember where he heard it. But as for the name, being a little familiar doesn't matter, there are so many repeated names in the world. And she herself was also an unlucky child. She had already passed the college entrance examination and was about to enter university life, but unexpectedly stayed up late reading novels and died suddenly. Then she was taken by a ghost to the underworld, crossed the Naiha bridge, drank mengpa soup, and kicked her into a vortex. But unexpectedly, her memory was not erased. In her mother's womb, she kept thinking about this matter, whether it was because mengpa tang had expired and even had no medicinal effect. If she complained, could she be reincarnated into a billionaire's family next time? Her father had only a beautiful mother and a wife. He didn't even have a concubine, nor would he linger in brothels and other places. Although he was in a place similar to ancient times, his father didn't attach any importance to the relationship between children. He didn't even have a son. He was extremely generous to their two sisters. He didn't even want to say a word. His mother had never seen a shadow before, mainly because his father refused to see them. Luojuan only vaguely knew that their family was very powerful and there were many talented young people, so she and her sister have been recognizing characters since childhood and didn't even have the opportunity to go out and play. But could this make her difficult? Unable to leave, he specialized in drilling dog holes and even lost them several times, which angered his father. He sealed all the dog holes inside and outside the Luo mansion, and even crazily did not let go of the mouse hole. Even the number of patrolmen guarding the mansion during the day more than doubled. Not wanting to read, he deliberately choked on the teacher, causing his popularity to run away several times and causing his father to beat him up. Xiao Luojuan was particularly unconvinced, crying and saying, "I don't like you. I want to go find my mother." She knew from a young age that my mother was my father's forbidden zone, and many times she made mistakes. As long as she mentioned my mother, even if my father was angry, he wouldn't hit her anymore. She thought, maybe she came out of her mother's womb, otherwise she would have been beaten to death long ago. Mind clearance 1. Woo, don't ask me again that Luo Juan and Yuan's sister have no relationship anymore. Tell me what Yuan's sister can't tell if she cheats Luo Juan. Luo Juan can tell, but Yuan's sister just cheats. Yuan's sister can't bear suicide herself. She cheats her, and now Luo Yuyan is the original female lead. What else is there? Why can Luo Juan be with Luo Yuyan without any grudges, calling her Sister Luo Yuyan? Isn't that normal? Luo Juan is not a child, she is an adult. Knowing that this is a world of novels, she has long been mentally prepared. Is she going to confront Luo Yuyan? She can't beat the female lead either. How does the plot develop without Luo Yuyan coming, right? 2. The relationship between Luo Juan and CP Fei Yu is small and cruel. The female protagonist is not a delicate little princess, so it's okay to feel pain on one side and on the other. This is a world of cultivation, not modern literature. It's illegal to beat people in modern times. So, what's killing a few people in the world of cultivation, in the novel world, establishing the correct values? Not to mention that the male protagonist's identity is still a big villain, so it's even more normal for him to not know the severity of his actions. And it's not heart-wrenching. Luo Juan can handle it completely. She has a clear positioning of herself. In the early stage, she was a big boss, a subordinate, a tool, and it was fortunate that she could survive, you know. There is a process to falling in love with Luo Juan. If you like love at first sight, then I can't help it, right? What else is there? Also, what I'm writing is not a female lead thriller. If you feel that the main characters are feeling frustrated, then don't hurt yourself. Hurry up and quit, thank you, beautiful women. Of course, I also want many people to like this book, but my writing is poor and it's difficult for everyone to adjust. It's normal for some people to not like it. I understand, thank you for your support, and I love you all. Mind clearance. This article is about minor abuse, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. It is impossible to physically abuse the female protagonist. Even if it is abuse, it is also minor abuse, aimed at promoting the plot. The female protagonist is an optimistic child. This article has both the career line of the villain and the career line of the original female lead. The two career lines switch, so the screen will be divided a lot. Anyway, it's just masochistic, but it's a little masochistic. It will be very sweet in the later stages, believe me, funny. The male and female protagonists cannot fall in love from the beginning. Everything goes through a process. The male protagonist treats the female protagonist as a tool from the beginning, but later on, he will spoil her very much. Don't enter if you don't like it. Thank you. End of this chapter. Don't be afraid, my sister will cover you up in the future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Don't be afraid, my sister will cover you up in the future. Compared to her mischievous behavior, her sister Luojuan is much more cowardly and foolish. At the age of 4, she can't even speak and walks unsteadily. Compared to her intelligence, her sister is inevitably not valued. But she enjoys playing with her sister very much, and most of the time they cause trouble together, and then ask her sister to help take responsibility. My father was so angry that his heart, liver, and lungs were in pain. By chance, she followed her sister behind him and entered a courtyard. She saw her cold and powerful father holding a beautiful woman in an indescribable tone, saying, "Look at your good daughter. Sooner or later, you will be killed by those two little brats. You need your wife's kiss to get better." The beautiful woman gave a perfunctory kiss and continued to look at the book in her hand. Luo Juan kept giggling incessantly, and later on, he often took advantage of his father's absence to secretly play with his silly sister with his mother. Although his mother was beautiful and had a cold aura, Luo Juan was born with a sweet mouth, lively and fond of laughter. With her white and pure breasts, the beautiful mother always liked to pinch their small faces. When she was 5 years old, she and her sister were taken to test Linghui by her father's trusted followers. Many children stood together and went up to test Linghui one by one. The one who tested Linghui was a kind old man with white eyebrows. She was the first. The other party grabbed her hand. Soon, the palm of her hand condensed into a ball of water drops and floated in the air. Luo Juan felt interesting and poked it with his hand, which was really the same as the touch of water. They say her intelligence is rare in 1,000 years and she is a super genius. Luo Juan looked at his little chubby hands and felt a bit strange. I had always thought that the names Luo Yuyan and Luo Juan were familiar to her for several years, but she was given the nickname of a super genius. Suddenly, something was wrong. I looked at my sister who was still foolish next to me and forcefully suppressed the strange feeling in my heart. When it was my sister's turn, Grandpa Bai Mei shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, I can only be a stable mortal in this life." Luo Juan. What does it mean? Is her sister a piece of trash? This plot is really familiar. The other children naturally heard it and chuckled loudly, "Ha ha ha, he's a waste, so pitiful. Laughing to death, it's so embarrassing. That's right, I heard she's the eldest daughter of the Luo family. Wow, a super genius and a super loser, ha ha ha, it's a great match." Luo Yuyan's little milk bun cried out in grievance, and Luo Juan stood in front of her sister with a fierce aura, saying, "You are so talented and amazing. No matter how trash she is also my sister, Miss Luo of the Luo family. You are a group of lemon essences who can't eat grapes and say grapes are sour." A group of children couldn't hold their faces, but they didn't dare to argue with her. They could only mutter softly, "You're still protecting a useless person. If I were you, I would feel ashamed." Luo rolled up his sleeves and prepared to go up and fight. "Can you say it again?" The little boy was not convinced and said, "What's wrong? You can change her by hitting me, isn't she useless?" Luoyu Yenai Tuanzi was so scared that she cried even more fiercely. Woo 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 woo. Father's confidant remained indifferent and only grabbed Luo Juan's hand, saying, "You are the miss of the Luo family. You should not be so impulsive in the future." Luo Juan was a bit angry and said, "Sister has been scolded. She is also a miss from the Luo family. The tall man in black said expressionlessly, the strong are respected. I hope Miss understands this principle in the future. The little Luo pursed her mouth, and Luo Yuyan's milk bun was also frightened and dared not cry anymore. At this moment, Grandpa Bai Mei's voice of congratulations came from beside him. Congratulations to the young master of the Rao family, he has produced another genius. Luo Juan turned his head and saw that he was also a milky dumpling, white and pure with a bit of pride. Niming said, thank you, uncle. Rao Fangzhou, thank you here. This is the silver money for Chongxi. Wait. Rao Ark, why is this name so familiar? Luojuan's face suddenly showed a cracked expression. What genius, what trash, and the name is so familiar, isn't it one of the novels she used to read? Why is this plot so like a fictional time travel novel? She can't be wearing a book, can she? Is it a type of ancient immortal cultivation novel? I'm not sure, I've read too many novels. If her sister is a useless person, then she's a genius. Isn't she a malicious supporting role? Which protagonist is called Luo Yuyan? I can't remember the title of the book, and I probably can't remember the plot either. It's a story from a long time ago, but she remembers that the book was a travel story by a major female protagonist. Due to the bizarre story background and the author's powerful writing style, she read it for a day and a night, and then stopped reading. In anger, she wrote a 1,000-word essay. Luo Juan stood there in a daze, his mind even more disorganized. So, the crying pussy in front of her will become the host of the female protagonist in the future. So, she used to bully her, grab her candy, and even use this silly sister to help her with her homework on the way back. Luo Juan Little Radish kept her head down thinking about this question. She looked at Luo Yuyan, who was gloomy and a bit timid next to her, and whispered, Sister, do you hate me? Nai Tuanzi looked at her in confusion and said, I don't hate. Don't be afraid, my sister will cover you in the future. Luo Juan patted the head of the milk bun. Her little calculations were clattering in her heart. Now let's get along well, and in the future, when the real female lead comes back, she can still hug her thighs or something. Wow, it's really enjoyable. But human calculation is not as good as natural calculation. After returning home, she separated from her sister and was forced to move to another yard, where there were many children about her age. It was said that they were all collateral children of the Luo family. In the future, she not only had to learn the 4 books and 5 classics, but also magic. Oh no, learning how to cultivate. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Little Face Eggs Collapse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Small Face Eggs Collapse. Her father also gave her a rare glance and said coldly, since it's a rare water spiritual energy with extremely strong talent, your goal is to step on everyone's feet. When will you defeat them and when will you be able to go back? 5-year-old Little Radish Head. Luo Juan looked at the little brothers and sisters around her who were taller than her, and her soft little face collapsed in an instant. For the first time, she felt how cruel and indifferent the world was. Looking at the ferocious senior brothers, the little Luo Juan smiled sweetly and said, Little brother, you all are so impressive. Are you tired? Let me tell you, I feel so comfortable pinching my shoulders and pounding my back. In a blink of an eye, 8 or 9 years have passed. The soft and cute milk bun grew into a graceful little girl, with a pair of eyes flowing like waves of light. Her snow-white skin looked like top-grade sheepskin, her soft lips, and her dark long hair tied into 2 buns, exuding a sense of spirituality and sweetness. Today is the day she is released from prison, and life here is really even more boring than prison. The senior brothers behind them all bit their little handkerchiefs and said, Damn it, this troublemaker has finally left. Don't say anything, she's finally leaving. I need to go back and celebrate. The person next to him grabbed him and said, Be careful. The hole where you escaped last time was reported by the girl Luo Juan in the movie. The mentor sends people to squat over there every day. There are only 2 holes in total. Did she report both of them? Yeah, even the hole we dug was sealed. Damn it, how did she find that hole? She's really impressed. Fortunately, she got lost. That little girl is very evil. When she first came in, she was only 5 years old. She looked obedient and soft, very easy to bully, and cute. She was also very good at getting things done. She would bring them tea, pour water, beat her legs, and pinch her shoulders. Apart from fighting regularly every month to set a ranking, they were also too lazy to bully others. But after 2 or 3 years, they found out that this little girl had completely changed. They used to be able to knock each other down with just 1 finger, but over time, their growth rate became particularly terrifying. One day, when she found out that they couldn't beat her anymore, the well-behaved and considerate character of the little cotton jacket completely collapsed. Not only do they bully them every day, buying them delicious food, but they also grab their toys, beat them if they don't give them, and report to the master. The key is that they still can't fight. How could there be such a two-faced little girl in this world? After several years, Luo Juan became more and more familiar with the world. At the same time, she finally remembered the general content of the novel, which really cost her a lot of brain cells. The female lead probably wore it when she was 14 or 15 years old, and after careful calculation, time has almost passed. No, she still needs to quickly find her own sister and see what the situation is now. Have you heard that the young lady of the Luo family was pushed into the lake by the young master of the Rao family? What? It's such a cold day, you wouldn't freeze your mind, would you? Hey, no matter how foolish you are, where else can you be so foolish? It's winter now, and the weather is surprisingly cold. Ordinary people even need to add a coat when traveling, let alone a thin layer of ice on the surface of the lake. If you fall into the ice, it's enough to survive. According to the content of the original work, the female protagonist crossed over precisely because of the death of the original host, as she was unable to cultivate in this world and was considered useless. It's not a big deal to not be able to cultivate originally. If she was born into an ordinary mortal family, it's okay to just pass it by casually. However, she was born into the Luo family, the first of the 3 major families in the capital, second only to the imperial family. The competition among the collateral members within the family is very fierce, not to mention that other families have long coveted the status of this Luo family. And her cold father has been indifferent to them since childhood. Fortunately, he is not a promiscuous person, otherwise there would have been a sibling dispute, which would have been a headache to think about. In this situation surrounded by wolves, a legitimate waste is enough to make everyone see the jokes of the Luo family, let alone her survival. Even if the younger generation of the Luo family does not bully her, people from other families will always secretly poke and stab the female lead. Those 2 people are still teasing. If you ask me, this person is also a shame to the Luo family. Before, he was eager to spare the second young master of the Luo family. Haha, wasn't she pushed down by the second young master of the Rao family? But I heard that Miss Luo is coming back, so it's going to be lively now. Upon hearing this conversation, Luo Juan couldn't help but feel a bit angry. The image of the silly milk dumpling from childhood still came to mind. He flicked his hair, walked over, lifted his foot, and stepped on the table where the 2 of them were drinking tea. What are you talking about? You're so happy. The 2 men were a bit angry. Luo Juan stayed in that haunted place for 10 years, and naturally few people in this city recognized her. Who are you? The little girl was too beautiful and spoke in a sweet voice. Of course it doesn't matter who I am, but I see that the 2 printing houses have turned black. I'm afraid there might be a bloody disaster today. Are you sick? The 2 men didn't show any courtesy when they saw that the other was a girl, and even looked up and down with rogue eyes. But if you can stay with me all night, I can be kind enough to give you a string of silver coins. How about that? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. As long as you don't protect him, it's okay. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. As long as you don't protect him, it's okay. Luo Juan kindly took out a mirror and said, how can you two benefactors not believe it? If you don't believe it, take a mirror to look at it. Is it because the printing hall has turned black? The two men didn't believe in evil and took a mirror to look at them. No, they said the little girl was digging in her own space bag, taking out a leftover bottle of ink and saying, don't worry, benefactor. Then, under the surprised gaze of the two, she collapsed openly on their faces. Dark ink flowed down from the head, leaving traces of ink flowing freely all over the face. Look, is the printing hall turning black now? Am I right? A man wiped the ink off his face, and the sticky ink instantly covered his face. In anger, he lifted the table and said, Grass, you little girl, I don't think you want to live anymore. Luo Juan looked innocent and said, Almsgiver, what are you talking about? I was just kind enough to remind you that the printing hall is turning black. How could you scold me? Also, be calm as a person. If you suffer from a bloody disaster later. Look at me. Today, I won't publicly strip off your clothes and parade in public. The noise here is too loud, causing many people to stop and observe. Luo Juan easily dodged the opponent's attack and took 2 steps back. Why are you so angry, benefactor? The other party directly drew out their sword from their waist and split open the tables and chairs blocking the way in front. Their ugly face was pitch black, and they could only see their eyes and mouth, which was comical. Luo Juan dodged and suddenly realized, do you think the printing hall is too dark, benefactor? I told you earlier, I can help you wash it. After speaking, my fingers moved slightly, and my palm gradually condensed into a water ball. It aimed at the heads of the 2 people. With a sound of rest, the water column shot out and flew them straight out. The ink and water on my face mixed together, and my whole body looked like a drowned rat, which was 3 points more destitute than the beggars on the street. The onlookers around exclaimed in amazement. Surprisingly, it's a rare water spiritual energy. Who is she? I don't know, no matter who it is, they shouldn't have caused such a disaster. They are still from a girl's family. What if they can't get married in the future? So ruthless and ruthless, it is indeed a wicked woman's heart. The swords in their hands were also thrown into the air by the water column, and then fell. The people watching the play around frantically retreated, afraid of accidentally injuring the pond fish. As a result, the sword hit both of them hard on the head, bleeding out. Luo Juan waved his hand helplessly and said, I've already told you that the 2 benefactors are suffering from a disaster of blood and light. You wouldn't listen to me. You're unlucky. The people around were filled with sorrow, probably because the little girl from someone's family had such a malicious mind. Luo Juan looked at the melon-eating crowd with a harmless expression on his face and said, What's wrong? Do you also want to be counted on by me? The onlookers were pushing and shoving each other to disperse. Luo Juan silently rolled his eyes and then left gracefully. In the elegant room on the 2nd floor opposite, a young woman and a handsome young master watched the farce clearly. The young man, dressed in a purple shirt and holding a tassel fan, said, It's quite interesting. How about we play a game? The girl was born exceptionally well, with eyebrows and eyes that were 3 times similar to Luo Juan. However, compared to Luo Juan's sweetness, and childishness, Luo Yuyan's body was more composed and mature. The flowing beauty of her eyes was the charm that captivated her soul. What game? Rao Fengzhou said, Guess what identity that little girl was just now, and why did she provoke those 2 men for no reason? How about that? Luo Yuyan took a sip of tea and said, I won't do anything that doesn't benefit me. TSK, how do you feel like you're better at calculating than a businessman? Well, there's been some unusual activity around Babeo Mountain in the past few days. Do you want to make a profit? If you win, then I'll sacrifice my life to accompany the gentleman. How about that? Luojuan said, did you win? Rao Fengzhou said, then you can accompany me. Luojuan was a little speechless and said, what's the point of this guess? Why don't you just say the answer? The boy in purple drank and said, then aren't you asking for a reward? By the way, outsiders say you're a worthless person. Why can't I see it at all? Are you pretending? The female lead said expressionlessly, guess what? Guess if I guess. I guess you don't guess. Rao Fengzhou remained speechless and said, forget it, let's not talk about this topic. Recently, I heard that Miss Luo Air is coming back. She is said to be the only rare water spiritual energy in the entire capital, an unparalleled super genius. The one who fought just now is probably your sister. What do you want to say? How is your relationship? The female protagonist pondered for a moment about the few remaining memories of the original protagonist, but the most memorable one was when her sister was 5 years old and confidently said, I'll cover you from now on. The original owner has kept it in mind until now, but when he returned that day, he heard the servants say that his father had taken his sister to another place to study and had never seen her again. The promise, more like a joke, gradually turned into a foam in the original owner's heart. I don't know, Rao Fengzhou said. Why don't you know anything? Luojuan's expression was a bit strange. Before crossing over, she was considered an orphan, with almost no family except for the director of the welfare home. Now, not only has she inexplicably gained a father, but also a younger sister. Rao Fengzhou said, forget it, it won't be difficult for you. I'll go talk about business later, but remember to contact me when you leave. Luojuan nodded and said, I know. By the way, do you need me to help you deal with that bastard at my house? No need, as long as you don't protect him. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Beautiful Tight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Beautiful Tight. When we returned to Luo Mansion, the sun had already set in the west, and the remaining clouds on the horizon were dyed red by the sunset, with a faint and mysterious purple rendering, making it look particularly beautiful. After the little girl returned home, she did not find her sister. Instead, she was well received by servants and had a sumptuous dinner. She was also taken to a bath by the maid who took care of her. After grooming, the sky was completely dark. The feeling of being cared for and taken care of makes the 5-year-old girl Luo Juan a bit uncomfortable, but taking a bath is really comfortable, haha, and there are also fragrant petals and bubbles. After washing, Xiaoqin will also help her apply fragrance. Is this the treatment she can have? So happy Wuwu. It turns out that when the young lady enjoys it so much, Wuwu, however, in the original work, it seems to mention the character Luo Juan. It is said that because my older sister is a useless person, I have always looked down on her and felt that she has lost face to me. After returning from studying, I continued to look down on the female lead, and was repeatedly slapped in the face by the female lead. Finally, I died in the Battle of Baobao Mountain. Well, it fits the logic of Xuanwen very well, and it was also taken offline very early. Luo Juan is not too worried about death. As long as she doesn't trouble the female protagonist or go to Babaishan, the plot of death can naturally be avoided. As for the future. Take a step and watch it. The little girl lay on the soft couch, comfortably flipped over, tugged at the small blanket, tilted her head, and fell asleep. The next day, she slept until the sun was up, but it was still Xiaoqin who forcibly pulled her out of bed. Luo Juan sat in front of the dressing table with a chicken coop head, and the maid next to her carefully tied her hair with a comb. Luo curled his hair for a while, but when he regained his senses, he found that his forehead seemed a bit heavy. Looking inside the bronze mirror, he said, "Wow, what kind of complicated hairstyle is this?" The little girl quickly dodged the maid Xiaoqing and continued to insert a hairpin into her head, saying, "Wait a minute, it's not that complicated. You can just tie a high ponytail or bun head." Xiaoqing pouted and said, "Miss, this hairstyle is so beautiful. It suits you very well, and I only inserted a hairpin." Luo Juan said, "No, it's not comfortable at all. My head is so heavy." During the training period, at most she fixed her hair with a piece of silk, there was no such thing as attention to detail. Xiaoqing had no choice but to say, "So. How about wearing this tassel butterfly hairpin?" Luo Juan said, "Great, what will we have for lunch today?" Xiaoqing patted her head and said, "The master said he wants you to attend the family banquet this afternoon, and it's too late. Miss, why don't you wear this pink dress? It looks nice and tight." Luojuan's face was full of resistance. She was already so old and even imitated other girls to wear pink. However, she couldn't resist Xiaoqing's coquettishness and still put it on because she found that her wardrobe was full of pink dresses. The so-called family banquet is just gathering together to have a meal. It has to be said that her father is really a very good head of the Luo family. He manages the entire family in an orderly manner, and most of the collateral members dare not make mistakes. Other families may have one or two playboys, but their family style is excellent. If their talent is too low to cultivate, they will be taken to do business by the collateral members. The family style is harmonious and beautiful, and there is no deceit. Well, the female lead was an accident. Maybe she was too foolish before. Even if she went out to do business, she would still be cheated out of all her wealth. Almost everyone came to the family banquet, including some close relatives and children, as well as her and the female lead. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. I'm fine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Do you think you have this qualification in Chapter 7? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Do you think you have this qualification? Luo Juan turned her head, and what caught her eye were extremely bright eyes, filled with a smile and longing. She swallowed her original words again and said, "I thought so." Luo Juan complained softly, "It's all my father's fault for throwing me to that haunted place, otherwise I could have protected you well." Luo Juan said a lot more, mostly on topics that were not nutritious. His mouth was dry, and the other party could only reply with one or two words at most. Luo Juan took a sip of water feeling a bit depressed. When she was a child, Nai Tuanzi would not be so perfunctory when listening to her complaints. Every time she listened attentively and made her happy. If you ask me, I think Miss is already old. Even if she cannot practice, she should learn some business skills so that she can support herself in the future. Yeah, we can still afford to raise an idle person in the Luo family. How about giving her a shop to try the water first? I have a mercenary guild under my name to take on tasks. Otherwise, I'll give this position to Miss Luo to test. It's easy, just sit there and watch the door. Hey, I think it's possible. Lord Luo also looked at his eldest daughter and seemed to be pondering. Sure, then I'll leave it to you to arrange. Luo Juan didn't say a few words from beginning to end, and her silent temperament was no different from before. Luo Juan took a few bites of food and then looked at the female lead, feeling a little puzzled. She remembered that the female lead would soon shine in the family. Why is she so low-key now? Is it that the timing hasn't arrived yet? Not good, not good. The people of the Yi family are coming to their door. A little radish ran back panting. Luo Juan recognized it as one of the people who had just run out in anger, ready to hit someone. Lord Luo frowned and said, "What's going on?" Others couldn't help but frown. The Yi family. Why did the Yi family come? Lord Luo's tone was icy. Didn't he say that he refused to receive guests at the family banquet today? The servant who followed closely knelt on the ground trembling and said, "They They said they want to get justice for their young lady. Luo Juan thought for a while, but didn't remember why. What kind of justice can we reclaim? The servant said, they said the young lady disfigured their eldest daughter's face and even poisoned the wound. The wound is ulcerating, and now they want us to compensate. They're just making a scene outside the door. As soon as these words were spoken, almost everyone turned their gaze to the female lead, with a look of surprise and uncertainty. Lord Luo. Yener, is there such a thing? Luo Yuyan stood up and said calmly, I have never done such a thing before. It's just letting the other party suffer the consequences. Lord Luo took a faint sip of tea and said, since you haven't done it before, I'll leave this matter to you to solve. Don't insult the reputation of the Luo mansion. Luo Yuyan lowered her head, a hint of disappointment flashing in her eyes, and her original emotions surged into her heart. My original father never paid too much attention to her since childhood, and he never paid attention to anything. My original mind was sensitive and fragile, and I only wanted to cause trouble to attract my father's attention. However, I didn't expect my reputation to deteriorate uncontrollably. Until now, it is still like this. Luo Juan put down his dishes and was about to say something, but his father spoke up first, if you let me know that Luo Juan is secretly helping your sister, then you won't come back in the future. Luo Juan, who had just returned one day, said, Luo Yuyan said, if I solve this matter, will my father give me a reward? Everyone dare not speak up. Father Luo said, what reward do you want? The female protagonist's body was particularly straight from beginning to end, and she didn't hesitate to say, I also want to go to the academy to practice. Do you think you have that qualification? Luo Juan bit his chopsticks, what kind of low emotional intelligence speech is this? Her beautiful mother followed her father, it's really fortunate that she suffered. From beginning to end, Luo Yuyan's expression was as calm as her father's, and her tone was so flat that it seemed like she was just stating a fact. I do. Sure, if you solve this matter, then I'll give you a chance to go to a university without any talent. As for whether you can get in, it's up to you. The concubine beside her covered her mouth in surprise and said, Master. Lord Luo waved his hand casually and said, once it's settled, someone will tell me. As for the family banquet, let's go. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Eating melon masses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Eating melon masses. Everyone stood up one after another, looking at the female lead with complex and sympathetic eyes. Luo Juan grabbed 2 more bites of rice and put several pieces of meat in the bowl. He looked at the female protagonist who was still standing and said, hurry up and take 2 bites. There are still many dishes left to eat, and the servants will take them away soon. Luo Yuyan pushed aside the chair behind him and said, I won't eat anymore. I have to go and solve some things. Luo Juan quickly grabbed the hem of the female lead's clothes and said, why are you panicking? They won't be able to run for a while, so let them make a fuss first. The bigger the fuss, the more embarrassing it will be in the end. Luo Yuyan looked at the little girl's tender and white hands and said, why do you think I can handle this matter? Luo Juan was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, no matter whether it can be solved or not, you have to eat. I just saw that you didn't even take a few bites. Luo Yuyan sat back in her seat and picked up several pieces of meat with her chopsticks. Eat quickly, I'm full and I can just go see a good show. Don't be afraid. If you can't handle them, when they go back, I'll go pack them with burlap bags and help you vent your anger, he said. Luo Yuyan looked at the fat and thin braised pork belly in the bowl. He rarely threw it on the table without being picky. Instead, he poked it with his chopsticks, and then put it into his mouth. It was very fat, but with a faint smell of meat. Just when everyone wanted to see her joke and see if she would smear the family, there was one person standing firmly by her side, even caring about her body in detail. Although she doesn't really need it, this kind of behavior is particularly heartwarming. After eating and drinking enough, Luo Juan had his servants bring 2 hand warmers, 2 cloaks, and a bag of melon seeds. Both of them were wearing the same style of cloaks, with a circle of snow-white fur on their collars, making them look like a pair of porcelain dolls. "Unfortunately, it's not summer now, otherwise we could have eaten watermelons," Luo Juan said while walking. "That's the standard configuration for people who eat melons." Luo Juan didn't say a word. In fact, she didn't need a warm stove or cloak. Her cultivation had reached the 3rd level of the spiritual character, and she could still resist the slight cold. However, looking at the other person's incessant chatter, she still didn't say a word of rejection. The usually quiet gate of the Luo mansion is now bustling with activity. Due to the deliberate influence of the Yi family, many melon-eating crowds have already gathered around, and there are also many mobile vendors pushing wooden carts to set up stalls, buying small snacks such as melon seeds and peanuts, as well as roasted sweet potatoes, roasted corn, fried chestnuts, and so on. Luo Juan ran over excitedly and bought 2 copies one by one, handing one to the female lead. Luo Juan felt a little helpless and said, "Enough, I can't eat that much." Luo Juan picked up a small spoon sent by the servant and ate sweet potatoes, saying, "What are you talking about?" Luo Juan said, "It's nothing." "Wow, Luo Juan. You still have the face to come out. Don't you feel guilty for causing so much harm to Yu?" A young man with a face full of bruises and swollen cheeks suddenly jumped out of the crowd, his expression extremely angry. Even when he saw the other person holding roasted sweet potatoes in his hand, his anger reached its peak. "You still have the face to eat. You shameless slut." Luo Juan remained expressionless throughout the entire conversation and spoke calmly, "Why can't I eat?" Luo Juan was eating sweet potatoes and ran to the line of the melon-eating crowd. He asked the person next to him, but the person next to him was also holding on to roasted corn and gnawing on it. "Brother, who is that?" The levels are divided into spiritual level, earthly level, heavenly level, and semi-divine level. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 9 is really chilling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. It's really chilling. He's the second young master of the Rao family, a wealthy and respectable playboy in the capital. The person next to him was holding a small stool and munching on melon seeds. Because there are no entertainment activities, eating melons and gossiping is their biggest entertainment activity. Yes, just now I ran in a fit of anger to talk to Miss Luo, but somehow I ran out with a swollen face and a bruised nose. A fat man who was setting up a stall said as he roasted corn. Ha, can't it be Miss Luo from the Luo family who fought? How could it be? Not to mention that she likes Rao Gongzi, and Rao Gongzi is a second-level spirit character. She's a useless person, how could she beat him up like that? Luo Juan understood clearly. Just now, he was busy shopping and eating, and had not had time to look around. Now, when he had some free time, he realized that there was a young girl wearing thin gauze crying particularly mournfully not far away. Beside him were many middle-aged men dressed in wealthy clothes, with anger on their faces, but also a hint of greed hidden. That must be the cannon fodder that was disfigured by the female lead. Rao Gongzi trembled with anger and said, "Yi Yu's face has been ruined. How can you ask her to find her husband's family in the next life? You wicked and poisonous woman, you have a snake and scorpion heart." The female protagonist spoke slowly and said, "Then you can marry her back, as no one happened to compete with you." Rao Gongzi. Are you crazy? Who would marry a disfigured woman back home? The onlookers around sent out a string of sighs and boos. The previous romance between these two people had spread far and wide, and most people in the city knew about their love story. However, when she disfigured, the man didn't want her anymore. Bah, he was such a fickle man. If it were them, they wouldn't want it either. Not far away, Yi Yu's face turned pale, and her thin and weak body was on the verge of collapse. She cried even more pitifully, but the look in her eyes towards Luo Juan was somewhat resentful. Enough, no matter what, the fact that Miss Luo of the Luo family destroyed my legitimate daughter of the Yi family is already conclusive evidence. I came here today to ask for an explanation from the Luo family, said a middle-aged man next to Yu. The onlookers were extremely surprised. They originally thought Miss Luo was a fool with a love brain, but now they didn't expect her to be so malicious and ruin the face of a young girl in her prime. This is not foolishness. Who dares to associate with her again with such malicious thoughts? The Luo family is really, at least the first family. How could they cultivate such a vicious daughter? The Luo family is not a good thing either. Look at the Yi family's daughter crying at the door for so long, the door has never been opened for her. How pitiful. The Luo family destroyed me for the rest of my life, but they didn't show any signs of it. It's really chilling. It's not just a cold heart. Miss Luo from the Luo family should get out of the capital. How could such a vicious woman pollute this pure land of the capital? This statement was a bit excessive. Luo Juan turned his head to look at the voice, but did not see any figures. Luo Yuyan rarely curled her lips slightly, her gorgeous face as delicate as a flower. Her tone was neither firm nor slow, even extremely relaxed, as if she had never paid attention to the Yi family from beginning to end. Is the evidence conclusive? Where did the evidence come from? Okay, I'll make the evidence public. The person who spoke was not the head of the Yi family, but he was also an extremely important figure. The middle-aged man comforted the woman next to him and said with grief and anger, "Yuer, don't be afraid. Uncle will make the decision for you. Please tell me how this poisonous woman framed you." Yu held a handkerchief and couldn't stop wiping away her tears. The thin veil on her face covered the ugly rotten flesh, but it didn't completely cover it, so she could still vaguely see it. That day, Rao Gongzi and I visited Miss Luo with the intention of apologizing to her. However, Miss Luo changed her usual behavior and instead became scorching and forced, cursing at us and wanting to drive us out. She said she would kneel down to apologize. I was so angry that I poured the tea on the table. Unexpectedly, the other person poured a basin of water over me and made my face feel scorching. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Who else can it be if it's not you? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Who else can it be if it's not you? The woman pitifully took out a crystal ball and said, "The images from that day are all in here. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, so I specially recorded them with a crystal ball. This crystal ball is not an ordinary crystal ball, it has the function of recording images, and it can never be fake." Then the video was shown to everyone, and the description was basically no different from that of a woman, with only a slight difference. The female protagonist in the video always looked at the exaggerated performance of the opposite person coldly. After the performance, the female protagonist lightly said, "If you want to apologize, kneeling down is more sincere." Then Yu splashed the water over, and after being avoided by the female protagonist, she splashed the water from the teapot onto the other person's face, and then her face began to rot. Surprisingly, it's true. The evidence is solid. Ha ha ha, I guess that poisonous woman didn't expect Miss Yi to even record it with a crystal ball. She deserves it. Oh my goodness, why is the legitimate daughter of the Luo family so vicious? Her scalp feels numb from looking at her. I dare not go to the Luo family's store to buy things again in the future. What if I am poisoned to death? The people around are discussing one after another. Luojuan frowned slightly. Are you sure this can be used as evidence? Luo Yuyan elegantly asked someone to move out a soft stool, sit with legs crossed, and her beautiful eyes looked at the Yi family who were acting, of course. You poisonous woman, you poisoned the tea. You intentionally spilled it on Yi Yu's face. The evidence is conclusive, you should kneel down and apologize to Miss Yi quickly. Rao Gongzi reluctantly came out to continue brushing his presence. Luo Yuyan said, I think it's better for you to keep your mouth shut. You're such a big person, how can you learn to talk like a parrot? You keep saying those few words back and forth. You're not bothering me, I'm tired of listening. And why should I kneel down and apologize? It's not that I poisoned you. Rao Gongzi. Who else can I be if I'm not you? Luo Juan said, are you so certain that I poisoned you? Of course. What if you wrongly accuse me? A matter that is firmly established, how can it be considered unfair to you? If it weren't for your poisoning, I would have knelt down and apologized to you. Luo Juan smiled inexplicably and said, do you dare to play that crystal ball a few more times? Uncle Yi said, what can you tell from looking at it a few more times? If it's really your poison, then you'll have to compensate the Yi family with 10 million taels of gold and 50 stores. At this point, the melon-producing crowd couldn't help but gasp for breath. 10 million taels of gold. Even if it's the Luo mansion, it's probably going to bleed a lot. Not to mention those shops, if we really go out, maybe the Luo family will withdraw from the 3 major families in the capital overnight. Luo Juan spoke calmly and said, it's unfair. If I didn't poison you, you not only have to kneel down and apologize for me, but also give me 10 million taels of gold. Instead, you want to give me 100 stores. How about that? The servant next to the Luo mansion was so anxious that he began to quietly tug at the female lead sleeve, and some clever ones had already started looking for the head of the household. Miss, this is not a joke. If you lose the bet, those 50 stores. Luo Juan just said lightly, if I lose, I'll give these things to myself and it won't affect the Luo family. Uncle Yi squinted his eyes, as if he was considering, and after a while, he agreed. They have watched the video over and over again, there can be no mistake at all. Oh my goodness, she's crazy. With so much money, she said she gave it a loan. Who wouldn't know how to talk big? In the end, she still wants the Luo family to wipe her butt. Luo Juan asked someone to take out his pen and ink and said, then let's sign and draw a signature. With so many people watching, what if there is no evidence or evidence to back out? Uncle Yi looked at Yu next to him, but the woman was just crying and had no intention of speaking. The man didn't think too much and signed his name. After signing, the Yi family took out the crystal ball and played the video. The first time, it's the same as before. The Yi family immediately mocked him and said, hee, I thought there was something. Now, hurry up and hand over the money and the store. Luo Yuan's eyes were too lazy to lift. Keep looking, I didn't say I just looked once. The person pursed their lips and continued to play it again. The second time, there was still nothing. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time until the end of the 9th session, everyone's eyes were sore and even numb. End of this chapter.